This particular conversation, which is really, I'm just trying to get Henry to speak, he hasn't been here for 10 or 15 years, could be called Why MBAs Are Useless, but we've decided to change the title. Saying that MBAs are too inexperienced, or too young at that point, to really benefit from the kind of education that's set up for them.
I start with the assumption that you can't create a manager in a classroom. And if you try to do that, in other words, if you try to take someone who's not a manager and try and turn them into a manager in a classroom, you create hubris. You create people who think they've been trained to manage but haven't been trained to manage, and they're going to get an awful shock when they try to do that. Or worse, the people who they're managing are going to get an awful shock. You can learn management. You know, having an MBA doesn't stop you from learning management, and most people who don't have an MBA have to learn management as managers too. But there is a slant to the MBA program, many MBA programs, that I think distort people's view of what management is. If you go to Harvard across the river, you have this impression that hand me a 20-page case and I'll hand you a decision. Over here, it's more the tilting, and at Harvard too these days, it's more the tilting towards analysis and a very heavy analytic aspect. Management is where art and craft and science meet. You can't do anything with craft when people have no experience, because craft, by definition, is rooted in experience. I wouldn't close down the MBA programs. We just had a discussion of that at McGill recently, a couple of days ago, with the new dean. I would simply recognize them for what they are, training in analytical skills for analytical jobs. We know that most MBAs go into things like investment banking and consulting. They're trained to do that. That's fine. Just don't pretend we're creating them as managers, and be very careful about management courses. Courses should be about management in the sense of exposing people to what management is, but not pretending that people are becoming managers because they're having certain cases or because they're oriented that way. So don't close them down, but recognize them for what they are. But a number of other schools will say, you know, we're training you for leadership. Read the Tuck School promotion or Harvard's promotion or whatever. We're training you, we're training the leaders of tomorrow, we're training you to be managers and so on. Do not believe it. You are not being trained to be managers. You're being trained very well in the business skills, in the business functions, marketing, finance, accounting, whatever it is. Those courses are good, they're strong, and they're giving people a sense of business, and that's the other side. But business skills, marketing plus finance plus accounting plus even strategy treated as strategic management, or organizational behavior treated as human resource management, does not make management. Management is about quite different things. Certainly organizational behavior courses get into that, and certainly managers have to deal with strategy. It's not clear to the extent to which they deal with strategy the way Mike Porter deals with strategy, but that's another story. So I think people should recognize that they've been well grounded in business skills. That gives them a good head start in that. If they want to be managers, they should prove themselves. They shouldn't expect, and companies, I think, should be criticized for taking people out of school and putting them straight into managerial positions. I think that's a dreadful idea. I think people should go into positions that use their business skills, prove their abilities, then go into managerial positions, and then recognize that's the time to start learning what management is all about, which is earn it. You want to be a manager? Earn it. You know, you shouldn't be a manager because you've got an MBA. That's nonsense. You should earn your managerial stripes. There are no natural surgeons, okay? I mean, somebody isn't sort of born and developed and is a natural surgeon. I don't need medical school because I'm a natural surgeon, okay? But we have all kinds of natural managers. We have all kinds of people who are hugely successful as managers, never spend a day in a management class. So there's not a profession in any stretch of the imagination. It's certainly not a science. There's nothing, almost not nothing, but there's not much that it can be prescribed by scientific technique in management. It's a practice. The reason you can nationalize so easily or privatize so easily is because all you have to do is change the chief executive. The hierarchy stays intact. Whether the phone company is owned by the government or owned by private sector, the hierarchy stays intact, the jobs stay intact, the whole system stays intact. They just report to a different person. So in a sense, nationalization, privatization became rather easy. just move it back and forth. What the really hard part is to move to the kind of system you're talking about, which I think of as the social sector, not the private sector, not the public sector, but the social sector, the NGOs, the not-for-profits, all those kinds of organizations that are much more participative, much more engaging, much more democratic, often, not necessarily, but often. And that's the hard one to go to, but that's where we need to go. Stand your ground and don't do things that you just think don't make sense.
Guys, thank you so much for coming.